Venezuelan Vice President of Communications Jorge Rodriguez stressed that the Donald Trump administration would find it hard to escape its links to the recent failed armed incursions into Venezuela. China is the first country to report that the risk of the COVID-19 outbreak is now low, as no new local cases have been reported during the past few days. More than 50,000 cases of the novel coronavirus and over 2,000 deaths have now been reported across the African continent. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Venezuelan Vice President of Communications Jorge Rodriguez, speaking during a press conference on Thursday, stressed that the Donald Trump administration would find it hard to escape its links to the recent foiled attempt at an incursion into Venezuela.
A estas alturas, queda perfectamente claro.
At this point, it's perfectly clear it's going to be very difficult for the Trump administration to wash its hands on its responsibility, as investigations have already been opened in the U.S. Congress and at the U.S. courts, as reported by Associated Press, to investigate the ex-Green Beret Jordan Goudreau over the raid in Venezuela.
And Rodriguez also presented footage of the interrogation of one of two U.S. mercenaries captured on Monday, Aram Seth Berry, in which he revealed details of the operation.
Did you know about a document that described the clause of the operation?
Yes, I think so.
How many people did you train?
From what I understand, it's approximately 50 to 60 people.
What is the Silver Corp company in charge of?
It's a private corporation owned by Jordan Goudreau, and it's about all I understand about that.
What will be your mission after entering Caracas?
To advise the forces that were coming in when they need us, and make our way to the airport as soon as we could.
If someone tried to enter the U.S. with the intention of eliminating Donald Trump, what do you think will be the response of the U.S. government in this case?
Yeah, they would definitely protect the president.
What were the objectives of the mission?
I believe it was to obtain specific targets and to, I think, get Maduro.
Are you aware that Juan Guaido, in the end, that contract acted illegally and that it's a crime to sponsor insurgency actions against the people of Venezuela?
I understand that's what you're saying, yes. I understand that's what you're saying, yes. This contract was posted several days ago by Jordan Goudreau and outlines my responsibilities with Silver Corps, signed by Juan Guaido, Jordan Goudreau, and Juan Rendon.
A new ambassador to Venezuela, the first in a decade. Formerly the interim charge d'affaires of the Venezuela Affairs Unit based at the U.S. Embassy in Colombia, James Broward Story was nominated to be Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to Venezuela on Wednesday, according to a White House statement. The move marks the first time the U.S. has named a formal envoy to Venezuela in a decade and comes over a year after Washington cut diplomatic ties with the country, evicting Venezuelan officials from the country's Washington embassy and handing the facility over to opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido. Story's naming for ambassador also comes on the heels of repeated denials by U.S. officials, including President Donald Trump, that Washington had anything to do with the failed plot to abduct or even assassinate Maduro, which unfolded on Sunday when a group of armed mercenaries attempted to storm the Venezuelan coast in speedboats. The long-awaited final recount of the votes from the March 2nd general and regional elections in Guyana began yesterday, amid complaints have already emerged regarding the process. The ruling Partnership for National Unity criticised the opposition People's Progressive Party Civic for a delay to the commencement of the national recount, as its polling agents informed officials of the Elections Commission that they had misplaced the keys to 3 containers holding the ballot boxes, meaning they had to be pried open. Each party possesses a lock on the containers. Meanwhile, the People's Progressive Party Civic raised concerns that the recount for the highly contested Region 4 had stopped at 5 p.m, 2 hours before the process was scheduled to conclude.
At 5:15 today, this afternoon, one of the stations closed off because the APNU AFC counting agent said that she has to go. We cannot have situations like those. The working day is defined by the timeline. We could have at least completed one more box at that station today.
And meanwhile, on Thursday, the ruling Partnership for National Unity announced that GCOM was forced to temporarily stop the tabulation process at the recount centre. It claimed this occurred after a secret meeting was busted between the opposition and GCOM's information technology supervisor. Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, has stated that COVID-19 has not yet altered his plans to hold elections at the end of the year. General elections are due by March 2021, but Gonsalves said citizens would vote ahead of the 3-month grace period. He said it's too soon to state if this will change, but he has moved ahead with drafting a letter to the Governor-General regarding the appointment of the Election and Boundaries Commission after discussions with the leader of the opposition. More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. China is the first country to report that the risk of the COVID-19 outbreak is now low, as no new local cases have been reported during the past few days. According to Mi Feng, spokesperson for the National Health Commission, all the regions of China are now at low risk. The long-awaited announcement issued on Thursday came after the province of Heilongjiang became the last to reduce its risk level, according to local media. Only 2 patients have tested positive for COVID-19 in recent days, both of whom imported the infection from overseas. Around 300 people are still receiving treatment for COVID-19. Beijing officially announced it had defeated the epidemic in early April, stressing that strict quarantine measures had played a decisive role. The number of people killed by COVID-19 in Europe has surpassed 150,000, with the largest number of deaths occurring in the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain and France. In the UK, the Office of National Statistics informed in a recent report that the risk of death from COVID-19 is significantly higher among some black and minority ethnic groups than among white people. According to the office, black men are 4.2 times more likely to die from the coronavirus than their white counterparts, and black women 4.3 times more likely. It's clear that the socio-economic factors impacting these mortality rates are fundamental to understanding them, as black and minority ethnic people are more likely to be exposed to the virus due to working in essential sectors that have not stopped working during the lockdown. Spain has extended a state of emergency imposed to combat the novel coronavirus pandemic for 2 more weeks from Sunday, allowing the government to control people's movements as it gradually relaxes a national lockdown. Spain, where more than 25,000 people have died from COVID-19, has been under a lockdown since March 14th.
In the last 24 hours, a total of 754 new cases have been reported throughout Spain, an increase of 0.34%. It is the same downward trend that we observed. Yesterday, if I remember correctly, we had a few more cases. Today we return to this downward data with those typical ripples of the tails of epidemics, which fortunately we are already in that phase.
France is preparing to ease the restrictions of its coronavirus lockdown, which has hit many of its residents hard. The French government set out on Thursday how it plans to lift restrictions on movement on Monday. Meanwhile, new groups of Parisians have been joining the food queues in some of the capital districts. François Cordeur, director of a local charity restaurant, expects the numbers to keep rising as he saw a 40% increase in subscriptions last week. France's biggest economic sectors such as tourism, construction and manufacturing have been badly hit by the coronavirus. Some economists have warned about government incapacity to deliver financial support packages while the country enters its worst recession since World War II. France has reported more than 25,000 COVID-19 deaths. Russia reported on Thursday another record increase in coronavirus cases at more than 11,000 as Moscow imposes new restrictions and ramps up testing. Russia now ranks 5th in the world in terms of the number of COVID-19 cases reported. The latest figures have brought Russia's total number of cases to over 170,000. The number of cases in Russia has been rising by more than 10,000 cases a day since Sunday. Officials attribute the increase to mass testing and the detection of asymptomatic cases, which are not always counted in other countries. Health officials reported on Thursday that they had carried out more than 4.8 million COVID-19 tests. According to official sources in Japan, the state of emergency could be lifted early in some areas of the country. Japan's economic minister Yasutoshi Nishimura said on Thursday that the state of emergency declared due to the COVID-19 outbreak could be lifted in areas that have seen a decline in new cases from May 14th. On Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe extended the nationwide state of emergency to May 31st, saying the infection rate had yet to drop enough to justify ending lockdown measures. Tokyo reported just 38 new cases on Wednesday, marking a 5th straight day of falling numbers.
The government said that the state of emergency would last until May 6, so I thought things would calm down and the emergency would be lifted around that time. And then I could take it easy to restart, I thought. But now it is extended for another month. I have to restart my business in some way, like opening the restaurant for just a few hours or so. Is it really substantial enough? Once the virus spreads, it could kill hundreds of thousands of people so easily, right?
Millions of people have sought unemployment benefits in the past week across the United States, suggesting that the economic sectors imposing mass layoffs have expanded. According to a report issued by the US Labor Department, the economic crisis triggered by nationwide lockdowns to slow the spread of the coronavirus meant that productivity dropped at its fastest pace in more than 4 years during the first quarter of 2020. The report added that the US economy shrank in the first quarter at the steepest pace since the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. The same report stressed that initial jobless claims for state unemployment benefits totaled more than 3,000 million for the week that ended on May 2nd. The US unemployment rate jumped to 16% in April. And also in the US, 605 new coronavirus cases were reported on Thursday, taking the total to over 1.2 million, representing close to 1/3 of the COVID-19 cases reported worldwide. Regarding the number of fatalities, the latest figures have brought the death toll to more than 76,000. New York, with over 300,000 cases, and New Jersey, with over 130,000, continue to be the hardest hit states. The state of New York has also reported the highest death toll in the country at more than 26,300. And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. More than 50,000 cases of the novel coronavirus and over 2,000 deaths have now been reported across the African continent. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the continent has also reported more than 17,000 people have recovered from the virus. South Africa remains the worst hit nation in terms of the reported figures, with more than 7,800 cases, while Nigeria leads Western Africa with a tally of more than 3,000 cases and over 100 deaths. The tiny nation of Djibouti appears as the worst hit in Eastern Africa, with more than 1,000 cases and a death toll of 3. Meanwhile, the mountainous kingdom of Lesotho, completely surrounded by South Africa, is the only African country that has not reported a single case of COVID-19. Several African nations have lifted some lockdown measures imposed to stem the spread of the coronavirus, despite concerns that a lack of testing means the real numbers remain unknown. Many children are facing hunger in South Africa as school closures mean an end to free meals. The closure of South Africa's schools 7 weeks ago halted a national feeding programme providing meals to 9 million extremely poor children. The economic hardship faced by some sectors of the population has been severe since President Cyril Ramaphosa ordered most citizens to stay indoors and closed all but essential businesses in late March. South Africa reopened some sectors of the economy on May 1st. Schools are expected to partially reopen later this month, with students due to be back in class from June 1st. Senegal's health ministry reported 59 new cases of COVID-19 on Wednesday, while 69 patients were discharged from hospitals. According to Dr. Marie Kemesi Ngom Niaye, General Director of Health, the new cases were detected after more than 1,000 tests were conducted. So far, Senegal has reported almost 1,500 positive COVID-19 cases and a death toll of 13, one of the lowest in Western Africa. The health director also added that 562 people have recovered from the virus since the first cases were detected on March 2nd. Deadly floods have hit the East African nations of Kenya, Somalia and Rwanda. Flooding as a result of recent heavy rains has killed more than 260 people across East Africa. Kenya has been the hardest hit, with the government reporting almost 200 deaths. According to the Kenyan government, the floods have also washed away 8,000 acres of crops and destroyed vital infrastructure. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, 55 people have died while 16 have been killed in Somalia. In Uganda, floods have trapped an estimated 200 patients inside a hospital. East African countries have also been hit recently by a locust invasion, in addition to the health crisis sparked by COVID-19. The rainy season normally lasts until June. At least 11 people have been killed following a massive gas leak at a chemical plant in southern India, with 800 others taken to hospital. The leak from the LG Polymers plant in Visakhapatnam came as people slept, and doctors say patients have been complaining of a burning sensation in the eyes and difficulties breathing. Areas around the plant have been evacuated. A senior official of the local pollution control board has stressed that the leak gas was styrene, which is usually refrigerated, and the leak was believed to have been due to negligence. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called an emergency disaster meeting. India, the fourth hardest hit country in Asia by the COVID-19 pandemic, has reported more than 50,000 cases and a death toll of over 1,700.
It happened, as per report, at around 2:30 a.m. in the previous night. Initially, the people were affected in terms of throat irritation, skin irritation, and some toxic gas smell. So the local villagers tried to contact the local administration and the local police station, and they went into the premises and also door to door to recover people who may be stranded. There were some people who were unconscious or semi-conscious. There were people who were not able to move. There were children, there were women, there were people who are elders. All of them were helped, and in the process, more than 500 persons were evacuated from that.
Iraq's new Prime Minister, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, took office after the country's parliament approved a new government on Wednesday, following nearly 6 months of political wrangling. The parliament approved 15 ministers out of a prospective 22-seat cabinet in a vote of confidence. 5 candidates were rejected, while voting on 2 ministers was postponed, leaving 7 ministries still empty, including the key oil and foreign affairs positions. Before the voting session on the new cabinet, al-Kadhimi said his government would be a solution-based, not a crisis government, and promised early elections, while he rejected the use of Iraq as a battleground by other countries. And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.